Hi, it's Erin. How are you? I am going to talk today about a question that a lot of people have, and that is stock photography worth it? So, over the years, and this is not something that's new to 2024, I have read in different forums, people tell other people stock photography's dead. Stock photography's not worth it. For the amount of time you have to spend taking the photos and keywording them and uploading them, it's not worth your time. All of these things. Well, I'm going to give you my opinion on whether or not I think it's worth it. Now, for me, I think it's definitely been worth it. And I've been doing this since 2007. So I've been doing this around 17 plus years or so now, and I have managed to make a little bit of an extra income from it. Not a lot. I am not rich. I'm not going to get rich doing this. Can I make some more money in the future with putting a little bit more work into it? I think so, but it's not like going out and getting like a full-time job. It's not going to bring me that sort of income, and I'm fine with that. I love doing photography. I really like doing the stock, and that little bit of extra income that I'm making from doing it is fine with me. I couple that income along with some other types of side hustles that I do related to creative work and whatnot, and all of that together, it's like a nice little part-time job for me. So I am okay with that. But what do I think? Is stock photography worth it? Well, I think there's three important things to consider here, okay? Number one, can you take decent photos? Okay. And what I mean by that is you don't need to take something that looks like a piece of art that you're going to hang on your wall. I mean, can you take a photo that's technically correct? It's in focus, the lighting's good, you don't have like excessive shadows or blown out highlights. Okay. It's a technically good photo. Are you capable of doing that? And I mean, if you were to go to the grocery store and just take a photo of the display of baked beans, would it be in focus? Would the color be good in it? Would the exposure be good? All of that. Just a technically decent photo. That's the first thing. The second thing is, are you capable of preparing that photo to submit it to stock? And what I mean by that is, are you able to describe it, to keyword it, okay, to get all that metadata connected to that image so that you can upload it to stock and it can be found, because that's very important. You could have the best picture out there in the world, but if you put it on a stock site and nobody can find it because you only used a couple of keywords, or maybe you used keywords that weren't relevant and really didn't describe the key features of the photo, somebody might not find that photo that needs it. Okay. And then the third thing is going to be, is it stuff that people can actually use? Is it a photo that people want or that they need for whatever purpose? That's the age old question, because you've heard people say this before if you've watched content related to stock photography, that you never know what you're going to sell. So that's a difficult one. But are you taking photos in general that maybe people might want or need? Things that aren't like overly saturated in the stock market already. Like, we don't need 8 million pictures of like apples or pieces of fruit on like solid white backgrounds. Okay. I'm thinking back years ago when everything was on a solid white background. Stuff like that. Okay. Probably won't sell very well. What do you have to offer? What do you have that's a little bit different? What do you have access to that other people don't? Or what do you have in your collection of photos that maybe you can submit? So I think all of that's important. Okay. That's the first thing before we start to determine, is it worth it? Now, for me, a couple things make stock photography worth it. And the first thing that I'm going to say that's most important to me is that even when I stop actively submitting images, okay, and just take some time off, or my life goes in a different direction and I'm not really doing this at that point, I'm still making money from it. That is really, really important and something to consider, because although you may have taken time to take photos, keyword them, upload them, all of that, what's really is important is that when you're not doing anything with them anymore, once they're there, that they're actually selling and you're actually making income. So I want to be able to sit back and do this and have my photos still sell. That's the goal. So to give you a little bit of an idea, I'm not going to share my screen right now. I'm just going to talk about it, but I'm going to give you an idea about what I mean by this passive income from your collection of stock photos. Okay, so I started submitting stock in 2007, very, very small portfolio. Took me forever to take photos and edit them and keyword them and everything else. And that is fine because everybody has to start somewhere, right? You learn as time goes by, you get more, what's the word I'm looking for? You get more proficient, efficient, you get better at doing what you're doing, okay? And it gets easier, okay? And it doesn't take as much time once you get used to it. So going back probably around 2013, 2014, I started to submit more consistently, get serious with it, okay? And there were years where I didn't do a lot. And up until the summer of this year, I still had probably, I don't know, 3 to 5,000 images on any given stock site, any given micro stock site. So I really didn't like put a ton of work into it all of those years like some people do. But let's talk about let's kind of give you an idea of the income that I've been making. So since 2017, every one of those years, and I'm actually bringing every year except for 2 years, I've made over $2,000 a year. Okay. My biggest year being 2021. But during that year, I had one single image sale that took up a large chunk of that. And I'll talk about that in a while too. So, anyway, 2021 would have been like my last year of like, up until now, my last year of really submitting a lot of work. Okay. So in 2021, my total income from microstock was 2940, so $2,940. Okay. And that included one very large sale that I'll talk about, like I said. So anyway, 2021, I was still submitting. Obviously, I was home a lot during that time and the year before. So I had a lot of time to photograph whatever while I was at home. Okay. Now, 2021, like I said, last year, they really submitted a lot. And then in 2022, I think that I submitted one small batch of photos at the beginning of the year. It was just, I think it was 10 or so photos that I did of I had designed like a photo background or backdrop. I did it in Photoshop. Nothing fancy, just a graphic resource that people can use. And that I'm going to say was January or February of that year. And then I didn't submit anything else until this year. So even with that said, in 2022, I still made $2,175. So I sat back and that money continued to come in. Okay, so that is what I mean about passive income. That to me is what makes doing this and putting the time and effort into it worth it. Absolutely. Nobody can tell me that it's not. Nobody can tell me that getting this extra money, a couple $1,000s a year, is not worth it. I think it's totally worth it. Okay. Now, so that was 2022. So I did submit just those few images. And then in 2023, when I didn't submit any more, I actually had, if you were to minus that big sale that I had in 2021, 2023 would have been my best year ever. Okay, I made $2,426 doing absolutely nothing, just basically passive income from all of these photos that I had submitted in the past. Okay, so that's a good indicator that, hey, if you upload photos that will actually sell and people will need, they will continue to sell in general for at least a period of time. Okay, I still have photos selling now that I put into my collection 10 or so years ago. So stuff still does sell. Okay, it just does. If you have something good, people will continue to buy it. So 2023, still made that money. Like I said, without that one big sale that I'll talk about in a little while, it was overall my best year ever. And now in 2024, I just started uploading seriously again in July, and I put about 2,000 assets into my collection. So that's a lot considering what I had before. And like I said, I think Adobe was my smallest portfolio at around 3,000 images, Dreamstime being my biggest portfolio, around 5,000. So let's say between 3 and 5,000 images on any given microstock agency. So considering that I made all of that money up until the point when I started uploading, and did I give you that total? It was $1,847 so far this year. And I've only been consistently uploading again since July. So I am on track to still have a pretty good year, pretty typical of what I've done in the last couple of years. Uh, 2 more solid months or so. Well, not quite, right? It's the beginning of November. So just under 2 months more to earn additional money from licensing these images. And we'll see what happens. But my whole point is that this has kind of been going on behind the scenes, even when I wasn't actively working with it. So when I wasn't taking photos and wasn't uploading them and all of that, I'm still continuing to make money. So that's one of the big things with stock. Now, another thing that I kind of touched on was people saying that it's not worth it. The amount of time and energy you have to put into photographing things and then uploading them and everything else, it's just not worth it. And what do they mean by that? I guess that, like, when you break it all down, how much are you making? Like, what is your hourly rate doing that? Okay. Now, if I were to take into account all of the time that I've put into this, I don't know. I can't even tell you like what that would break down to be because I have such a variety of images in my portfolios. I have the stuff that I've deliberately submitted it as stock. I've had stuff that I've just photographed for fun over the years that ended up being stock. I have photos from years and years and years ago from vacations that I just took because I was on vacation that are now in my stock portfolio. So it's really kind of hard to say. But I'm going to talk about a couple of situations where I spent very little time on taking photos and editing and uploading them, and the payoff was really big. The number one time, and I'm going to post these pictures up here and you'll see them as I talk about them. The probably biggest um, instance of this happening, of not taking a lot of time and getting a big payoff, is this image that I took in New York City. Okay. I took this image in New York City. I had gone to the city on, I think it was early one Sunday morning with my husband and my daughter. We were just walking around. I went in there to take pictures and we were showing my daughter the city and everything. And we were primarily in the financial district that day. And I was just kind of going around, nothing fancy, nothing artistic or anything, just kind of documenting places in time. The stock market, the area around there. I think we went to Battery Park, down to like the Oculus in the World Trade Center. We were in all these different places in that general neighborhood. And at one point, I took just a very simple photo, vertical photo of a street scene. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I just said, okay, this is cool. Let me just take a photo of this street. And you have in the foreground a bicycle that's chained to a pole. I think trying to look at it closely. Is it a pole or like a short post? I don't know. Anyway, you have a bicycle there in the foreground. And then in the background, you can see some cars, you can see some people, you can see the buildings on the sides. And up quite a bit are my husband and daughter walking. They didn't know that I was taking this picture. They're just all walking up there while I stayed back and was just taking some pictures. So anyway, obviously this is editorial because we're dealing with people, we're dealing with property in the form of these cars that are recognizable cars. I think if you zoom in, you can even see like license plates and stuff like that. So public place, even though there's people and property, it can be done as editorial. So anyway, took this photo, submitted it with a batch of other ones, doing my, quick editing, whatever, like the type of editing that's allowed for editorial photos, like minimal type stuff, slight cropping, not to destroy the scene, slight like color correction, stuff like that. And I submitted it. And there it sat on these agencies. Well, back in 2001, I had gotten, and I think it's probably around a time when I really wasn't like concentrating too much on stock photography. But I believe I found out when I got the email that I was receiving my monthly payment. And I got the email and it said, like, you're going to be paid out. It's like 800 and something dollars. And I'm like, 800 and something dollars? Like, how many photos did I sell while I wasn't paying attention to what was going on? I log onto the account and I didn't sell a lot of photos, but I did sell this one photo one time for $750. So that was the chunk of it. And then there were like some other photos, like my usual monthly sales thrown in there, and that's what brought it up over to over $800. And I was just completely floored by this. So obviously, it was sold for some sort of an extended license. I never did find out what it was used for. I think I checked online, like you can do like reverse image searches, or like I Googled stuff and I just could not find it. I did take it off the other sites. Now, the agency that I sold it with, I do not believe that they do any sort of like buyouts or anything with the photos. And I was never notified or asked if I wanted to sell the rights to the photo or anything like that. But I did remove it from the other stock agencies just in case. So that was my one big sale with that photo. But my point being, for the amount of time that it took me to take that photo, what did I do? I probably like crouched down in the street because I usually do that when I'm taking street scenes to get low and get a different perspective. And I took that photo and I got home later and I edited my photos and uploaded them and keyworded, uploaded all of that. But what do you think? That definitely paid for our tolls to drive back and forth into and home from New York City. It was early Sunday morning. We weren't even paying for parking. So again, you can't tell me that wasn't worth it. Now, I do have to say, an image like this, and it's funny because I have a TikTok. I do have this little TikTok account. It doesn't do well. I don't have a lot of followers, but I did do a short about this image. And that's the one, of course, that everybody's following. And people have been commenting on that ever since I posted it. Even like today, people are still commenting on it, because I think people are amazed that you can make that kind of money with stock photography. But you do not hear about these types of things too often. It can happen. It does occasionally happen. I'm one of the lucky ones that it happened to, but this is not the norm. This is not going to be something that you're seeing happen all the time. And I probably won't ever see anything like that happen again. I really, I don't expect it. But then again, I didn't expect that one. So you can't expect for these big types of things to happen, but when they do, and certain things like that do tend to happen, like not necessarily the one photo sale, but just images that you don't expect to do well. And the next thing you know, you're making hundreds of dollars off of this collection that you didn't expect to sell any of. So stuff like that, again, totally worth it, right? But you just don't know. You don't know when you're going into it. Is this going to sell really well? Am I going to have this lucky break like I did with this photo? You just don't know. And I have some other examples of this with collections, but that was the one where I sold like one photo and it was like a lot of money and it really made a difference in my annual stock income for that year. Another one, and I've talked about this before, so I'm sorry if you watched my other content, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but my sheet music photos. So years ago, and let me see, when did I first start submitting this? It looks like this was a set of images that I initially took in 2014. Okay, so I just happened to I had some old vintage sheet music that was my mom's, that wasn't probably given to her. Wasn't even hers, I don't think. It was so old that it was like falling apart. The edges of the paper were like breaking off. Like that's how old it was. And it was some sort of classical music. So it wasn't anything that was like under current copyright or anything like that. So anyway, I took a couple of photos from like different angles. I did a panoramic shot, a couple different like crop sizes and whatnot of some different angles of this sheet music. And again, it wasn't anything that took me any long amount of time, but that music has sold. And let me see. You go into my collection to give you a better idea. Oh, I should say that this was selling really, really well. And for some reason, I didn't do what you're supposed to do with stock photography. If you see that something's doing well, go and do more of it. I did not do more of that until about 2018 when I rephotographed some of it, did it a little bit differently, added like some vignetting and some different textures to it in Photoshop and whatnot, and I submitted a few more images. But all of those in total, the sheet music ones, okay, I have made over $2,000 selling them since that, let's see, since back in 2014, over $2,000. So think about the amount of time that it took me to photograph, upload or download from my camera and then like, tweak them with a little bit of editing, keyword them, upload them to the sites. nowhere near whatever that hourly rate would be. Um, if all of that took me 2 hours to do all of that, both shoots and the uploading, keywording, all of that, then what did I do? Did I make, like, over $1,000 an hour? Can you sit here and tell me that's not worth it? And that's one of the other things with stock photography. Like I said, you never know what's going to sell. So with stuff like that, it's worth it. Now, are you guaranteed that this stuff is going to happen? No, unfortunately, you're not. Okay, it's basically a crapshoot. Stuff might sell, it might sit up there, it might never sell. But the more images and the different, if you have like a diverse collection and you can put different things into that portfolio, you're getting more opportunities to, potentially sell things and to make money off of images that maybe you didn't think would do well. You just don't know. So that was one of the examples. I have a couple more examples like that. I've spoken with about this one several times before, so you've probably heard this story as well. But I went to a local public. I need to clarify that it was a public car show in a public place. There was no admission. You didn't have to pay to get in. So basically, I was able to photograph stuff. I was able to then upload it for editorial. But as I've said when I've told this story before, I was there with my husband and my daughter. My daughter was younger. She really didn't want to be looking at these cars. She didn't know what they were. They were it was like a Hollywood like car show type thing. Okay. They had like the Back to the Future car, the Ghostbusters car, Mystery Machine, Monkey Mobile, Dukes of Hazzard car, some other ones that I really wasn't familiar with that my husband knew what they were. Batmobile, stuff like that. So I was there maybe about 20 minutes tops, took photos of the cars. Like I went home with like not a lot of photos, but one, two, three of each car that was there, the cars that I knew anyway. And I came home and I don't know if I keyworded them that day or the next day or whatever, but they ended up being keyworded and they ended up being submitted to stock. Okay. So I end up submitting them to stock. They sit there, and then one day I realized that that Back to the Future car is selling again and again and again and again. And I'm like, what is going on? And I realize, oh, it's the anniversary of the original Back to the Future movie. So that that is why it was selling like so much. And I went, "Oh my gosh." And it just continued to sell and sell and sell. So that particular image, and I don't that particular image, I took actually had like two different images of the car, one that was taken straight on and one that was like on a little bit of an angle. So it was basically the same image, but a little bit differently. Um, so far, since those images were uploaded back in, oh my gosh, 2015, that's when I went to that car show. Just that one car, I have made $798 off of that car. Now, of course, from that collection, other images sold too because other things happened. Like I think there was another Ghostbusters movie released. Um, there might have been something with Scooby Doo, something with Batman. I don't remember exactly what, but that entire collection that I submitted has made me over $1,200. Okay, so the Back to the Future car making me the most, but then that collection as a whole made me like quite a good amount. So again, like I said, about 20 minutes at this event, photographing it. Let's throw in there the time it took to go back and forth. So now we're looking at like 40, 50 minutes. Okay, maybe another half an hour. So let's say it took me 2 hours total to do this work. There you go again. Oh, okay, so I made about $600 an hour. Yes, totally worth it. Did I know that these cars and these images were going to sell this well? Of course I didn't. But that's what happens. Similar situation. I took photos of Barbies years ago. I think it was during the pandemic. I was just photographing my old Barbies, my daughter's old Barbies, just in the Barbie house, sitting there, hanging out, all their heads together, all sorts of stuff. And similar to the thing with the Back to the Future car, I started to sell a bunch of these. And it was right around the time when the Barbie movie was either announced or I think when it was released and when it was about to come out. So you don't know. Now those Barbie photos have made me $826 from the time that I put them up until today. So again, Really good payout for a minimal amount of time. Some other ones that I did, baseball card ones have that was just a collection of maybe I think 5 images has made me over $500. So a lot of different collections that I wouldn't expect to sell so well that just really sold really well. So that's when you get into that, yes, it can really be worth it if you're photographing things that are going to sell. You may not know that they're going to sell at the time, but think about that when you're starting to photograph something or you're around the house and you find an old thing of toys and you're like, I'm going to photograph these as editorial photos or whatever the case may be. What's going on in the future that you don't know about? What movie's being released? Okay. What's going on? Maybe you have, I don't know, a collection of GI Joes or, the strawberry shortcake dolls or whatever. I mean, they're starting to do, I guess they've been doing it for a while, but they've been selling, I've seen more stuff with the strawberry shortcake characters. So if you have those old dolls and maybe that's the hot, Christmas gift for kids this year, or one of them anyway, you may see that type of content sell more. Another thing that you can do concerning something like this is you can kind of look ahead. Look at, what movies are in production right now, what TV shows are in production, um, what which are being released. And if it is something that's related to, sorry about that. If it is something that's related to like a character or something that you have old toys at home, like vintage stuff or whatever, photograph it and put it up because you might very well see that those photos start to sell really, really well when that particular movie's released or announced, okay? And not everybody has this stuff in their houses. Just because you have an old box of Barbies or vintage Cabbage Patch dolls or whatever, not everybody has that stuff. A lot of people have gotten rid of it. There's not a lot of that stuff on stock sites. If you search it up, you're going to go, oh, wow. I find that with a lot of my stuff. There's not a lot of photos of the Back to the Future car or, certain board games or board games. That was another big category that I didn't really expect. I was just doing it for fun during the pandemic, taking these photos of the games and the little figurines and, the game pieces and whatnot. And they did rather well. So all of these are all things to consider when you're thinking, is it worth it? To me, yes, to me, it's worth it. It's all about, is it worth it to you? Don't worry about what somebody else is saying that it's not worth it. When I see people say trying to dissuade somebody from doing it on these forums, and they're like, "Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not this. It's not that." They're taking an awful lot of energy to tell people not to do something. Why is that? Maybe it's because they themselves haven't been successful. Maybe they're not good at taking pictures, or maybe they suck at sorry, maybe they suck at keywording and doing that little bit of data entry stuff. Who knows? But chances are if they're coming after people and telling them, it's not worth it, well, it's probably not worth it to them for whatever reason, and that's fine. Just because someone else is not doing well with it doesn't mean that you can't. I've also seen, since I've been getting involved in YouTube, I've seen people do different videos on, hey, I tried selling stock photography or I tried submitting stock photos for a month and it wasn't worth it and stuff like that. Well, this isn't something that you're going to do for a month. Okay. I told you that I've been doing this since 2007, but really, really started doing it in about 2013, 2014. So I've been doing it for a solid like 10 years. And like I said, I haven't been consistent during that time. I've taken more than 2 whole years off completely without submitting anything. And the passive income continues to come in. So it really just depends. You have to, if you're going to do this, you can't throw up 5 photos and then say none of them sold. Like 3 weeks later, you say, well, none of them sold. I guess it's not worth it. You know, Doing this for a month. Okay, well, first of all, how big did you get your portfolio during that time? Did you upload things that are actually going to be, that people are going to want or need? Did you upload stuff that people are actually downloading at that point? So if I upload like 500 Halloween photos in April, chances are I'm not going to sell them very well until what? Like maybe the summer and in the time leading up to Halloween. Okay. So it really depends on what you're submitting. So you can't say, I've done this for a couple weeks or I've done it for a month and it's not working. It takes time to build a portfolio. Sometimes you'll hear people say it takes time for your photos to just kind of get into circulation and for people to find them. So there's a lot of variables that factor into whether your work is being seen, whether people are downloading it, all of that. So bottom line, if it's worth it to you and you are learning that you can make a little extra cash and it's a good amount and it's good for you, then give it a try. Okay. Another thought that I had was some people, depending on where you live, okay, if you live in the US or in another country where you're like, oh, this isn't a lot of money, a couple $100 a month or whatever, that's nothing. But to somebody else that's selling the same stock photos, that's making the same stock photo rate as you, wherever you live, that could be a life changing amount of money for them. So these are all things to consider for whether it's worth it to you. Okay. For me, I like having just that little bit of extra money. And I hope to build upon that now that I've been taking it more seriously this year once again. But only time will tell. I have seen a little bit of a trend upward, it does seem. But again, I have to see how does that play out long term because a lot of these little bumps that you see could be seasonal bumps or whatever, you don't know, you have to look at it over the course of the long term to see how you're actually doing. But as always, thank you so much for taking your time to listen to my nonsense. If you have any questions or any comments, please drop them down below. If you have any ideas or anything that you would like me to do a video about, let me know. And always, I forget to say this sooner, smash the like button, right? Smash the like button, subscribe, please, if you haven't yet. And oh, I forgot to say thank you so much because I hit 1,000 subscribers. Yay! Anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go take those pictures, and I will see you next time. Bye.